Hello.
Hello. My name is Jen Sungshine, here with my dear friend and longtime creative partner, David Ng. And together we are the co artistic directors of Love Intersections, a media arts collective that produces intersectional and intergenerational film and artwork from underrepresented communities of color. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that we are gathered here today on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Part of our work as labor activists and queer artists on unceded territories means working in solidarity with ongoing Indigenous struggles for sovereignty, decolonization, reparations, and land back. Hot Pot Talks emerged during the pandemic from our collaboration with the Lim Association in Chinatown, historically a neighborhood of Chinese railroad laborers who were brought to settle Indigenous territories as part of the ongoing colonial project.
So we are really excited to be hosting this special edition of Hot Pot Talks as a part of Mayworks Festival of Working People and the Arts, which is hosted by the Union Cooperative Initiative. Mayworks Festival celebrates diverse artists and working people at the intersection of art, social justice, and labor. The festival will bring together artists and workers from a diverse range of organizations in the visual and media arts, community arts councils, cooperatives, and labor to celebrate the rich history of workers and labor unions in BC. Check out mayworksbc.ca for the full schedule of events running May 1st to 14th. So today's episode is on themes of intersectionality and labor activism. This is our third Mayworks special episode where we are in conversation with artists, activists, and organizers in the labor movement. Joining us today is our special guest, Rick Rickson. And we are also hoping that Chiyi Tam, one of our past Hot Pot Talks, will also join us. But yeah, for now, Rick is going to join us. Rickson teaches social work at York University. For over 30 years, he has worked as a community organizer and human rights advocate in some of the most diverse and dynamic world cities, including Toronto, Montreal, New York, and Hong Kong. In Toronto, Rick has been actively involved with numerous community groups and citizens committees like the Asian Canadian Labor Alliance, the Chinese Canadian National Council, Urban Alliance on Race Relations, and Safe School Policy Review Task Force of the Toronto District School Board. So welcome, Rick.
Hello.
Hi, Rick. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Tell us, why don't I always find that whenever somebody else introduces me or read my bio, it could be like kind of awkward because it may not encapsulate everything that you are and everything that you do. So I wanted to start by giving you an opportunity to reintroduce yourself in your own words and tell us a little bit more about you and where you're joining from.
I'm just a typical immigrant from Hong Kong and came here in the 90s, early 90s. And I actually came here as a visa student to start with. So I went to McGill for my master's degree, and then I lived in New York City and worked there as a tenant organizer. And I moved back and I applied for immigration and I got accepted to Canada and became a Canadian and work in Montreal, and I don't speak French. So that's why after the referendum in 1996, I moved to Toronto. And since then, I live in Toronto, work in Toronto, and enjoying life in Toronto.
Nice.
So this part of the story not mentioned in the bio.
Well, I'm curious, Rick. So, I mean, we were really excited to talk to you because you're a member of the Asian Canadian Labor Alliance. Could you tell us a little bit more about ACLA, what it is you guys do, what you guys are maybe working on?
Mm-hmm. ACLA is Asian Canadian Labor Alliance. So it was formed in year 2000 by a group of Asian Canadian labor activists. So and they went to a conference in US, which is kind of like the counterpart of ACLA, but which is way more established. So during at the conference, and they noticed, so and when Asian Americans came together, there's so much energy and so much insights that we could learn from. So that's why when they came back and they started to like work together and form ACLA and try to
Mm.
also do the same thing. So and ACLA is committed to doing two things. One, within the labor movement, we want to promote anti-racism because historically, I think you and your audience know really well. So, and Canada has not been friendly to Chinese and Chinese Canadians from the early days to even now, right? So, and so we want to make sure like people who talk about workers' rights are also sensitive to racism and also racial division and inequality within the movement. And then on the other hand, ECLA is also trying to promote workers' rights and also our consciousness of the lower and low income group and also workers in the Asian community. So, and kind of
Mm.
like doing bridging between the two movement, the anti-racism movement and also the labor movement.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm curious. I'm going to kind of state the obvious, but I mean, I'm curious if you can tell me what does that sort of look like,
Yeah.
because I'm particularly curious about. I mean, the importance of organizing around, like, specifically the intersection of race and labor, and you also mentioned class as well. So it sounds like, the energy. What I'm hearing is some of the energy that that the founders had when they went to New York was also addressing like a gap maybe in some of the organizing that was currently in the labor movement. Yeah, could you tell me about that? Why is it important to organize on the intersections of race and labor and also class?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a great one about intersectionality because
Mhm.
like
Hmm.
if you see social justice, you have to understand how social injustice operates. So
Mm.
and in Canada or elsewhere, so and like racism and capitalism always work together. So to create like the unequal distribution of wealth and opportunity. So that's why when we talk about justice, we have to understand
Mhm.
when we talk about racial equality, and we
Hmm.
should not lift out those who are within our community that suffer
Mm.
from the inequality within our community, which is
Mm.
like in Chinatown, and we all enjoy the food and also the cheap stuff in Chinatown. But at the
Hmm.
same time, you have to understand workers in Chinatown, they are likely working at minimum wage, and they might
Hmm.
not have the same protection as other workers. So that's why, like within our community, so this sense of or this aware that's this kind of awareness of their rights and
Mhm.
Mm.
also the class division within our community is fundamental. So otherwise,
Mm.
we are like hypocrite. So when we
Mhm.
talk about equality at the same time, we just go to Chinatown, enjoy cheap food, and don't
Mhm.
care
Right.
about like the injustice in Chinatown. So I would say the same in the labor movement. So when they talk about like equality and brotherhood or sisterhood, so at
Yes.
the same
Hmm.
time, they don't care about what happened in Chinatown or like
Hmm.
the barrier against the racialized population. So
Hmm.
so that's why like for us, so and majority of our members are both active in like these two sectors.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, that's really, Dave and I have this conversation all the time, the just nuancing that straddling of different kind of communities and spaces. And oftentimes, I think when Dave and I are both part of different communities, we're queer, oftentimes we find ourselves in these kind of like liminal spaces in between, different groups and disciplines and institutions, and also trying to translate across
Mm-hmm.
different spaces. And Dave and I often talk about how like the work actually shifts and is flexible and is dynamic in order to adapt to what is the like pressing, what is the need in that particular moment with the type of people.
Hmm.
And this is something that I think like is is talked about, but I feel like is not talked about enough, is the privileging of organizing social justice, for example. When Dave and I call ourselves anti-racist, what does that actually look like? How do we actually embody it? How do we actually put it into practice and on the ground? So all of those things are just deeply, deeply fascinating to us.
Yeah. I'm curious, Rick, when you describe some of these this marginalization of especially working class folks in Chinatown. I'm curious, what kind of what does organizing look like for that type of issue?
I think is I would say is challenging because we are not just fighting against the system. So we're also fighting with
Against each other.
against our own people,
Yeah.
quote and unquote, right?
Right.
So because like Chinatown, when we talk about Chinatown, seems like Chinatown is out there, and we get there, we have everything we share, right? So, but
Yeah.
at the same time, like people know Chinatown, live in Chinatown, work with Chinatown, or connected to Chinatown, and we have different Chinatowns. So, and
Yeah.
my friend, when I was in New York, I remember one of the seasoned and very famous activists reminded us. So, and we have two Chinatowns. We have the uptown Chinatown and downtown Chinatown. So,
Yeah.
which is actually just a metaphor, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and he talked about like those privileged within our community. They
Yeah.
actually make use of Chinatown to build their economic and political capital. So they
Yeah.
use Chinatown to be like the base, so they could be our representative and shake hands with the powerful. So, and that's why they have to keep Chinatown alive,
Yeah.
but they don't care about like who actually keep Chinatown sustainable. So
Yeah.
I would say most likely the workers. Okay.
Right.
So, and then we have the downtown Chinatown. So, and who are the workers who actually most likely are immigrants, and they don't speak the language, or they speak the language like me with accent and incomplete English. So, and that's why they have to stay there, and they get stuck there, and they stuck there, and even though they might not have the best protection, and they likely work under a minimum wage, and sadly, a lot of them, they from the first day they arrive to the day they retire, they are in Chinatown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Right.
but when we organize, we have to deal with both Chinatowns
Yeah.
in order to really like deal with like the politics of representation,
Yeah.
because like they say, the elite would say, we don't represent them because
Yeah.
they want to make Chinatown more like a cultural symbol. So they talk
Right.
about food culture, they talk about our success. So forget about the past. So,
Yeah.
and so that's why like those elites tend to silence any attempts to bring out the issue and deal with the issue, and what they call rock the boat. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's even more difficult than like fighting equal racial justice within the social movement, within
Totally.
any other social movement. Do you agree?
No kidding.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's fascinating because David, you and I really took our time, and resisted doing any work in Chinatown for those very reasons that you speak of, Rick, precisely because we wanted to be sensitive to those complexities, and also to the different groups that have so much at stake in the
Yeah.
in the Chinatown, whether that's the romanticized version, the imaginary version, the uptown version, or the downtown version. Like there's just so many groups at stake and involved that Dave and I were so careful, not to mention we were these like weirdo artists coming through on a like sideways,
Yeah.
and not wanting to contribute to the gentrification of Chinatown through like our own art washing, right? So we were so careful. So we actually started to we knew we had to build relationships. So we started with the Lim Sai Hor Kalmak Association, which is the building that UCI operates out of now, and and David also has had a historical, decades-long relationship in that building with the Lim elders, and so and the reason why I'm referencing this is because I'm curious, Rick, if you can tell us about like your kind of surname connections to, to Sin, to your family upbringing, whether you have your own, association building or benevolent association building that you're connected to. Tell us a little bit more about your upbringing and your story.
All right. I was born in Hong Kong, and my parents are from the Four County region, so where most of the old timers in Chinatown are from. So, and all the indentured workers who built our railroad are from that region, right? So, and
Me too.
I was like
my
you
family's
guys.
from that area too.
I was like you guys. I was the second generation in Hong Kong. So, so I growing up, I was always very sensitive to my parents' accent. So when they speak Cantonese, they speak Cantonese with their Four County, the Toi San accent. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I was always quite sensitive to it. And but I didn't really take it as an issue until I actually finished my MSW work in New York. And as being a tenant organizer, I had to visit from building to building in lower Manhattan. So where majority of the area is actually Chinatown. So I actually noticed something very different from my organizing experience in Hong Kong. So because I noticed a lot of them have been in North America for at least 2 generations. So, but they don't have any access to any information about their rights, as simple as the landlord-tenant protection. So, and then on the other hand, I also noticed majority of the landlord that refuse to fix and repair their units are Chinese.
Yes.
So, and then I also noticed the third thing, so which is related to what you are doing, what you guys are doing, and very important because I noticed like when I visited quite a few families in Chinatown area, and I noticed they always have like the diploma of the children.
Yeah.
So amazing. A lot of them are from like a lot of their children graduated from Yale, from Columbia, you name it, all the Ivy Leagues.
Yeah.
But none of the children actually care about what they are struggling with, like the lack of repairs, and like the worst case is like you could see your neighbor upstairs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because there's a hole in the ceiling or in their floor.
Wow.
Okay. So and I was wondering, so why it's like that? It must be something that we have to bridge. We have to bridge the people who stay and stuck in Chinatown, and the people who actually get educated and they are they're well informed with like the system, and to actually help them like engage them so their knowledge and their degree or education, their professional expertise could be used to strengthen and contribute to the fight within Chinatown. So that's why like when I heard about your history project, and I felt also re-energized because this is how the Asian American was built. So which is not from the first generation, but for the second and third generation to take ownership of their own identity, to go back to the community and deal with the inequality within our community and the broader system. So this is where I'm from, and also this is why I'm interested in it. I'm interested in your show.
Well, it's interesting too, right? Like David, so a lot of the themes that come up when we have these types of conversations, especially on Hot Pot Talks, is this concept of the return. So many of our guests who have had historical connections or childhood connections to Chinatown have left and then they come back. And so there is this very interesting journey that occurs that it doesn't actually happen to a lot of people. In fact, it's almost like a rite of passage when we're talking about Chinatown. So that is making me think about, just the privilege of the guests that we've had, David, I don't know if we've ever had a guest who was like strictly, from Chinatown, does Chinatown, and stayed and remained in Chinatown. That in fact, a lot of our guests have had the like going away and coming back. But and then
Yeah.
I think the last, my final kind of thinking around this is not a very well formulated thought, which is just this idea of the just want to trouble. It's troubling, but also I want to trouble this idea of like pride and saving face that is so
Mhm.
em, em,
Ende
endemic,
endemic?
endemic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm ESL, so I was avoiding. That's my excuse. Um,
Mhm,
to like Chinese culture, broadly speaking, is this idea of like your self worth is so intrinsically tied to your education status and to
mhm.
your, to that, you know. And anyway,
Yeah.
I'll just say like that's something that I've disagreed with my parents around, but I appreciated and have thanked them when they were like, all we want is for you to go to university, because I was the first person to go to university in my entire family and relatives. So it's
Mhm,
all they wanted for me, and then I
mhm.
did that. But I also disagreed that is my self worth, you know.
Yeah. Rick, when you were talking about some of the Chinatown politics, it also, I was just thinking about, it's often what Jen and I also encounter as well. I mean, we're, as we were talking before we started the live stream, we Jen and I come from, come from a women's studies background, where we're activists, right?
Mhm.
And coming into Chinatown and sort of also experiencing some of the more, actually, to be frank, right wing politics, very sort of pro
Conservative.
and conservative, really anti poverty. Chinatown and
Mhm.
Vancouver
Mhm. Mhm.
neighbors the downtown east side, and it's a really difficult encounter sometimes. And Jen and I have experienced I guess two things I would say. Like, we've experienced definitely like attitudes that we very much disagree with, in terms of especially the anti-poverty aspect. Um, but I've also noticed, I mean, Jen, I don't know if this is your observation as well, but since working with us, different folks in Chinatown also start to have different conversations. When
I
we're
mean,
sort of
it's not because
when we're
of that.
well, what I mean is, like, when we're trying to, anyways, I'm just thinking about, for example, like the collaboration we're doing with the Downtown East Side Heart of the City Festival, when now we're infusing conversations that we're doing in Chinatown with also, collaborations with the Downtown East Side. The energy also then shifts because the voices are different in the room as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm hoping to see more of that's what I'm hoping to see more of, especially, you know, as we have a very difficult, I'll just say difficult political situation in Vancouver right now.
Oh, you mean the mayor? It's
Yeah, exactly.
just name it.
Yeah,
I totally understand what you mean. And cultural representation is always there. So and we have to take it back. So it's not
yeah,
like I think Jen talked about returning. So and I will reframe it as taking it back,
Mm,
because I think Chinatown has always been in you. Okay,
mm,
so it's just
mm,
about how you actually reclaim that history and its
mm,
story and also your own identity, and then by doing so, you also get back to this so-called geographical and spatial area called Chinese community or Chinatown to
mhm,
redefine it, to
mhm.
also reinsert some of the narratives have been silenced by those power elites in the community. So because
yeah,
like Chinese community has always been very active and also politicized. So and even back to China, like the whole Chinese history is filled with revolution. So
mhm,
we are like the irony is China remains the one of the very few communist countries, no matter like whether you like it or not. Okay, so it's out of people's revolution. So and then back
mhm,
in Chinese community. So and a lot of our stories of resistance and resilience and never been told, but they were
mm,
there and they actually could be reconnected with like new generation of activists like you guys. So
mm.
and it's like, do you know Toronto Chinatown at one point is the only city has three new Chinese newspapers that are unionized.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So and from 2001 to 2011, from Tsingtao to World Daily to Mingpao, all three of them were unionized at one point. Okay, so it's out of their persistent struggle and also excellent organizing. And then do you also know, at one point, Toronto Chinatown has one unionized restaurant,
Really?
which was in 1977. So,
Wow.
and the workers in International Restaurant, which is on Dundas right now, the new owner call it Dim Sum King. So it was actually unionized. It was
Wow.
unionized in 1977,
Yeah.
and then unfortunately, like I said, our biggest enemy is always within our community. So,
Right.
and even though after they certified and unionized, and they lost the fight in a few years. Okay, so and then we also have like cases like Dr. Kinyip Chung at U of T, like who actually fought really hard, really hard, and all the way to Human Rights Commission. So and eventually got settled and get the recognition he deserved. So and we always have this kind of struggles. We never actually stop fighting, but this kind of narrative of resistance and resilience never been told. That's why younger generation they just assume yeah, like maybe yeah, we are kind of like the model minority because like we are all, we have so many successful students, and we always have like the professionals speaking in TV on behalf of us. So that's why like we have to play around with it and take
Yeah.
ownership with it and
Yeah.
reclaim it and we define it. So and then we can actually we cover what has been silenced and made invisible.
Yeah. I mean, there is something to be said about a diversity of, strategies and tactics, right? And that each of us play very different roles that texturize each other. But I'm particularly resonating with at one point you were talking about the conflict and the infighting that occurs. And that's something that I think is just simply unavoidable in organizing and in conflict, or sorry, in organizing and in activism. When I'm facilitating, conflict is obviously a very productive thing, or it can be a very productive thing, and that I use it as a way to actually team build and deepen the relationships that organizers have with each other. But I'm wondering if you have any kind of like insights or stories that you can share, because I never know what to say when, particularly in like when white people or when Westerners ask like, what's up with all the infighting, that your people or your group, and to me it's like very jarring, because there's something to be said about like divide and conquer. So they want to see us fighting with each other as opposed to fighting the system and institutions. But I'm curious if you have any insight that you can share over the years that you've experienced.
I think like the first thing is like try not to let them make it like our culture. Okay, so and for anyone who suggests politics doesn't involve any in-group fighting, they never been very active. So
Yes.
anyone who actually do any kind of activism,
It's true.
so be it in a queer community or labor movement or even in the partisan politics within partisan politics, like in-group fighting is always almost the order of the day. So but when it comes to Chinese community, so they made it like oh, tell me more about like what happened to the Chinese.
Yeah.
So what
Right.
happened to you people?
Yeah.
And my first response is like, is it really just us? So have you ever experienced something like this with your supervisor,
Yeah.
with your leader, and also with your allies?
Yeah.
So we always have this kind of tension and contention. So why, when it happens to Chinese community and we make it like, oh yeah, it's Chinese, and tell me about what like this Chinese thing, and then we also self like survey ourselves, and then stop like confronting them. So that's why my
Right.
first response is to confront them, try to resist, like make it into a cultural narrative, because
Right.
this is actually political. So this is political. So and that's why class consciousness is important to us, ACLA, because we want to replace any cultural narrative with this notion of class division. So our struggle is no different than any division between the rich and the poor in any community or in any corporation.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. David, I know you're looking at is Chiyi joining us right now?
Chiyi's going to join us in 10 minutes.
Amazing.
Sorry.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. So we have 2 minutes. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Oh, no, nothing. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm responding to Chiyi.
And then the second thing I would try to do, in addition to resisting any transposition of cultural narrative, is organizing. Organize. Get people together. And if they are not organized yet, and try to do something that could actually connect the dots. So, and that's why in the community, when I was in the community, so we make use of action research. So, and one of my students in 2010, she did a very simple action research, and she just spent a week in Chinatown, the intersection in downtown Chinatown. So and try to approach randomly 500 people, and eventually get to interview close to 170 people in the intersection. So, and just make use of that, and she was able to actually point to reality. So, and majority of the respondents actually earn below minimum wage, and majority of them are not aware of the Employment Standard Act, and also majority of them are working overtime without compensation. So, and that very small action project attracts the most media attention from mainstream to Chinese, and from radio to newspaper. So organizing could actually help us bring the voice, give voice to the community, and also get people together. That's also why the 3 Chinese newspapers could actually form their own union. But the reality is still there. So power division is still there, and that's why they could just stay for that long. And unfortunately, some of them, the paper also disappeared.
Yeah. I mean, we're also fighting, it's the highly accelerated digital and technological age. So papers and journalism in general is just it's.
But what's I find interesting? I don't.
Craft.
I mean, maybe it's because I can't read and write Chinese, but the restaurant specials are still only found in the Chinese
newspapers. Yeah.
You can't find the specials online. You have to buy Ming Bao. I'll tell a funny story though, because I'm normally when I go to the Chinese supermarket, they'll speak to me in English, right? But there was one time my mom asked me to pick up a Chinese newspaper because she wanted to see the restaurant specials. So I couldn't figure out why, because the cashiers never speak to me in Chinese, but they saw that I had a Chinese newspaper, so the entire interaction they wanted to talk. They assumed that I could read and write, right? But it was actually the newspaper was actually for my mom.
I'm thinking, David. David and I have been talking at length lately. Now that I think we're nearing our 40s.
Don't say that, Jen.
Sorry. So the reason why I say things like this publicly is so that I can begin my public self-acceptance of time, and of understanding time, and of aging. But so something about Rick, how to organize, especially when there's still such resistance, from my parents, for example. They don't want me to stir things up. They don't want me to be political at all in any way, shape, or form. In fact, my dad, there was a news clipping around City of Vancouver and the mayor, and just, potentially re-examining the grants that are given to community groups, for example. And my dad texted and sent that link of that article to me and asked me, will this affect you? And then just gave a reminder, don't be the model citizen, do the assimilation thing. More importantly, don't stir things up and don't call attention to yourself. So I think there's a lot of people who want to do things and organize, but they're also dealing with their own perhaps familial and like the piety, the filial piety to their parents, and just not be outsiders.
Yeah.
Totally assimilate. Hi,
Yeah.
Chiyi. Welcome. So
Hi,
glad you're
Chiyi.
here. Yeah, you made it.
Yay. Why don't I quickly read your bio, because I didn't read your bio earlier, but we're so happy that you joined us.
Fine. Chiyi
Okay, it's
can
fine.
introduce yourself. Chiyi, why don't you introduce yourself and then we can get back into the conversation. Welcome.
Okay, I love that. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Chiyi.
Very nice to meet you. My name is Chi. My pronouns are she and her. So I organize out in Chinatown here in downtown Toronto, Trinity 6 territory. And yeah, most of my access to the intersection of, Mayworks, labor, all these things, is through Chinatown, through both informal and formal labor organizing that we've seen, mostly informal. I love that question of, how do we deal with the genuine concern for us in saying
Yeah.
don't stir things up, like the genuine worry, and intergenerationally that being there. Yeah, I'm curious what you guys think.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a good place to, because what part of the conversation that we've been having is some of the difficulties, or I forget, Rick, how you put it, but the difficulties of organizing actually within our own communities.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm curious, what has your experience been in terms of organizing with, if you quote unquote, our own people? Yeah, what is what has your experience been like?
The whole gamut, and I have found myself recently reflecting a lot with different people that we should be so lucky to be in conflict with each other.
I know, right?
Mm, mm,
That's what a real community is like,
Yeah.
just
yeah,
having
Mm-hmm.
real generative conflict where there's real value differences. There
right,
are people who are like, yeah, there definitely are people who are like, I don't know if like could be differences to the tune of like this elder just hasn't heard of this thing, and so of course they technically are transphobic. Absolutely, not even technically, they just are. And then
right,
obviously we have like younger folks who really want to get engaged, and that's like a huge barrier because they don't feel safe in those spaces. There's like that version of difference, and then there's the difference of like,
right,
I migrated here with no avenue except for a business visa. And so I had to make my small business run. And so, yes, I want my properties to sell really well because the Canadian government screwed me and I don't have another pension plan alternative. And so my
right,
retirement entirely relies on this building selling as well as it can. So, yeah, I am pro gentrification of Chinatown because
right.
that's my lifeline right now. And then obviously like me being like a vehement like anti-gentrification organizer and being like, dude, we can't sell out Chinatown like this. We can't just be building
Yeah,
condos and turning a profit for ourselves. And like to just hold Uncle Tim in the room still,
yeah.
despite that level of difference. It's like total values difference. But
Hmm.
I should still be so lucky to be able to have that argument openly, frankly,
Mm,
with Uncle Tim, and just being like, I think that's a really horrible opinion for you to have. You know that I disagree with you, but also I'm
hmm,
like sitting in your bar and gonna like still have this beer with you and just struggle.
mm,
Mhm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, the chair of the BIA versus, the younger Friends of Chinatown group, is
yeah,
like a classic kind of conflict, but we just have to stay in dialogue with them despite that,
yeah.
because we ultimately still are part of Chinatown.
Yeah, well, and I think that what you're raising too is it's also like it's a way that we can also, like, a generative thing that I'm thinking of that comes out of these conflicts also, is that there's a lot of we, and Chi, I think we talked about this in the last Hot Pot Talks episode, but the type of boba liberal type of, like, really,
Mm,
these right wing energies that have sort of clamped onto the rise of anti-Asian racism, to use that as a ploy to gentrify Chinatown, increase policing in Chinatown, all of the things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so to be able to publicly, oppose or be in conflict also, in a way, I think, kind of fights back against some of that washing and says
Mhm.
that, hey, not all of us think, definitely not
Oh,
all of
that's
us think that
interesting.
way, you know?
A joke that
Yeah.
we make in downtown Toronto often is that I feel like the Chinese Canadian community is a clear example for a lot of other diasporic organizing groups that have like a cultural specificity to what they're organizing around, where our community is fully capable in terms of class difference of gentrifying itself and
Mhm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
still read and legibly being Asian
Mm,
somehow. That is like so insidious, and actually it's even more clarifying. It's somehow like even
yeah.
more clarifying that there's like a class-based worker tenant basis to organize, and we can't just like have it all go into the wash of like feel good
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
like
Yeah.
cultural organizing.
mm-hmm.
There's that forces you to be quite specific there in the context of your
Yeah.
own community.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
good prompt. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's giving Asian Heritage Month. AAPI, as it were.
Yeah.
But I also want to get back to Jen's point about the family relationship,
Yes.
because
Mm,
I also want to dispute or demystify that kind of notion of family a relationship, because I think, be honest. So have you ever argued with your friends, with your siblings, or with your parents? So, and I would say, like, to me, my family. So if we stop arguing with one another, we that means we don't talk to each other.
Mhm.
So, and
Yeah.
the
right.
question is whether, if this is the case, it's just like the community. So our choice is whether you want to stay away from your family or the community, or you still want to, like, keep on arguing with them. And by
Mhm.
arguing with them, and you bring your point, and you also change the so-called like pre-existing understanding of so-called a family and a parent-child relationship. So
Mm,
because, like, it's just too romanticized, is not really the reality. And I'm sure like those middle class notion of family relationship is not
mm,
there, at least it's not in my family. So, but I
Mhm.
love my family,
mm.
but I always argue with my parents and also my siblings.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
I feel a
Yes.
lot of privilege in my positionality in relation to that. Like, I feel a lot of
Mm,
privilege because I come from an organizing family, and there's something
mm,
like very permissive of
Wow.
like seeing how terrified like some of my classmates would have been, some of the people I would have met, that were very drawn to Friends of Chinatown's work, or just
mm,
drawn to the idea of Chinatown as a safe haven, but wouldn't feel so comfortable speaking up. And like 100%, it's because like my parents came to Canada and happened to have student visas in the year of 1989, and like Tiananmen Square being like a blatantly open known topic that granting them
mm,
PR like fast track. And then my dad obviously like being part, like just kind of like being part of the version of the diaspora that's like very open and blatant and like takes pride and identity in
mm,
being an organizer or like being very political about it. Yeah, it's like it goes even
yeah.
further. Like
Wow.
I recently did a tour of New York and Boston's Chinatown just to check in with their land trust projects and check in with their work to like talk and compare and contrast. And this has been perennially true of all Chinatowns, but the insidious thing of us breaking ourselves apart, um, because there are like people flying nationalist party flags and like different people like
Mm,
deliberately flying CCP flags because they're being like family associations are being paid to fly those flags.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's like now
mm.
like people are fighting over those flagpoles
Wow.
in the center there of New York's Chinatown. I'm not seeing that happen in Toronto's Chinatown yet. I'm
Huh.
not seeing that happen in Vancouver's Chinatown yet, but it's
Interesting.
happening. It's
Yeah.
Interesting.
blatantly happening, and like
Yeah.
it's open dialogue on the streets when I'm asking them about what's going on with these flags.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
that's never been non-contentious ground. So like it's like it's as big as like those kinds of dynastic conflicts,
Yes.
Yeah.
the
I'm,
war
court,
we,
conflicts,
court dramas.
and
yeah,
it's
we were
small as
Jen
these.
and I were joke.
Yeah.
We were joking. Like there should be a reality show of all
No.
the.
No. Yes. Yes. We were joking about that, but in retrospect, I think
You
that,
would
Yeah.
need too much context to like
yeah.
Yeah,
build
that's
like
true.
a mainstream audience to
Yeah.
understand the soap opera.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Chi. You toured Boston and New York to compare their land trusts. Was there things that you learned that could be brought to the Canadian context for organizing land trusts in Chinatown and elsewhere?
It was very interesting. It felt like we had a lot to offer our
Mm,
Yeah, I was yeah.
yeah.
They were very curious about how much knowledge we got to have through even our public school system or just like our public organizing discourse about being on Indigenous land. They're
Mm,
very curious about that.
right.
Just how did you guys like teach yourselves? Did you start translating? Did you engage your local First Nations before doing a translation so that you could create like orientation materials for migrant workers who are like interested in learning about like the tension of like, could you ever belong on land that is stolen? This like age old question, and like how do
Right.
you build how do you build ideas of solidarity and like
Yeah.
without becoming like, I don't know, very, very problematic and overly convoluted about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting
Well,
because the
talking
city,
about us.
yeah, the major cities in the US, I would say, is still like 10 years behind on like decolonization and
Yeah.
in conversations around like indigeneity and
Yeah.
yeah, I would say.
So
Not yeah. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
no, it feels really nice to be able to like cross-pollinate that back and forth. What else is happening? The state of our real estate crisis is really at another level.
Yeah.
The way that our housing market is structured. So it's so nice to be able to have those kind of organizer conversations where you're trying to apply the same model, where you're interested, you can understand that there's a basic shared values there. And to compare. Yeah, then it becomes clear what is policy versus
yeah is because my question is like, is that something that can be like transplanted from different cities to different city, from another country to another country? Is that something that perhaps you can draw inspiration from? But yeah, I don't know, how do we model after another city with its own kind of set of complexities and specificities? Yeah, I don't know.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I'm curious, we're kind of getting to the end of the hour, but I'm curious, thinking about next steps and in the future, what are you guys working on or what do you hope to work on? Rick, do you want to go?
Lately, we actually try to we tell the story of labor movement within the Asian community. So and we just finished a banner, so that highlights like the history of labor activism and also workers' resistance in the Asian community in Canada. So and we try to get more funding so we could make more copies and also make it more extensive so we could reach more broader audience. So and this is the first thing, and then the second thing we try to do is all keep on connecting, because we notice there are more and more groups that are active in the Asian community, but they might not have the workers' right or the class struggle agenda. So that's why this is like this outreaching campaign will be also our priority.
Great. Maybe, Chi, before I give you a chance to answer, maybe Jen, we can show. I'm just thinking, Rick, when you were describing, you know, reflecting on the history of organizing in labor organizing in the Chinese community, I thought maybe we would share this window, our new window display. So this is by Kyla James Yin. It's called.
Oh my God!
Maybe Jen, show the next one.
Yes.
The next
Hang
image.
on.
So it's a Kalin, and the title of the piece is Transmigration. And maybe I'll just read just one part of the artist statement because I just really loved. So we gave Kyla sort of a really brief synopsis of some of the labor and union organizing in history of Chinese labor and union organizing, and she came up with this. So yeah, I'll just
So
read this one
beautiful.
part. When asked to create something that represents the ongoing history of labor organizing in Chinatown, I thought of solar punk as a way to imagine a present and future where history, the environment, and technology coexist harmoniously. My depiction of the Keilun harmonizes natural, technological, and supernatural elements in the hope that our collective future can do the same. Yeah, so I really love this. If folks are in Vancouver, it's in the windows of our studio at 525 Carroll. So.
So beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Well
Yeah,
done.
Chi, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, Chi, how about you? What kind of things are you working on in the future or hope to work on?
So many things are happening, guys. I'm so excited to tell you. So like the long term dream is to see like a sex worker cooperative like happen,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
It just makes sense to buy
cool.
out the people sitting at the reception in these massage parlors because everybody knows how to take the money, clean the rooms, do the whole thing anyway. So all the massage parlors should be worker owned anyway, separately. So that's the
100%.
Amazing,
long-term stretch
amazing.
goal. In the interim, the solution is still a real estate problem. Like they're still getting evicted and their leases are very, very, very precarious. So excitingly, we are going to pilot a census of our mutual aid societies, the historical like clan association, family associations, because we know a lot about their work in migrant like labor organizing, but we've never actually specifically asked them what is their role in the context of housing provision. So we're kind of going in with that angle, which will let us inventory them, figure out what the state of their repair is, figure out if there's like some digitizing like broadly to do. And so we incorporated the Toronto Chinatown Land Trust. We've just announced our AGM for July. We will be going to Montreal and hopefully seeing a lot of you guys gathering for the Chinatown Summit there this September with the JA Foundation that also just founded. And of course, we're doing a cross-country tour of Karen Cho's film Big Fight in Little Chinatown as a way to like launch all of these things that are happening across the country. So much is happening. And there's so much to invite you to come. We're going to have our first AGM and have obviously a big line dance and just do a massive, we're going to rent out as if we're booking a wedding banquet. Just like tables that are fully served, sat down.
Amazing.
For the first AGM. So I'm so excited.
Oh, love that.
When is it?
Yeah.
When is it?
The actual date, I think it's July 8th, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're going to be out of town.
Yeah, I was wondering. I'm coming in and out of Toronto, but I'm not going to be there that time. I was like, oh, maybe I could drop by.
Well, everybody should look out because membership is going to launch soon. All those things are going to launch soon. We'll announce them. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we always end with our favorite question. And I know, Chi, you've answered it already, but we're going to ask it already. Or anyways. And that is, what is your favorite hot pot ingredient?
I have changed my answer.
You have? Oh. Okay, so do you, I don't remember what your first
my first submission to Hot Pot Talks was cheese-filled fish balls.
That's right.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
So it's changed since then?
It's changed since then, yeah. And I have a new appreciation for Wai San. I think that's what it's called. What is Wai San in English?
What's that?
It's some kind of very starchy.
Oh, mountain medicine? It's white and long?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. And then you feel
everything.
It's slimy. It's slimy outside?
It's slimy.
It's slimy outside, but it's like a spongy, like if for folks to compare, it's like cassava-like or like kind of plantain-like and like very fibrous, just a sponge flavor.
So good. So in the dried version, sanyao translates to like mountain medicine, and it's like very medicinal as well in the dried form, but also in its fresh form, although I never buy it anymore because it's so freaking expensive. But you can actually eat it. I think you have to cook it, because if you eat it raw, sometimes people have like allergic reactions. There's some toxins on the slime, I think. But the longer you cook, the starchier it gets, and the more it soaks up and absorbs the hot pot flavors, and it's so good.
You can't leave it in the hot pot. You kind of forget that it's in there, and then at the end, discover that you've created something beautiful.
I will try it next time.
Yeah.
And
me too.
Rick, what is your favorite hot pot?
All right. My favorite is udon.
Yes.
I always like add udon in the end of the hot pot party.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and udon could absorb all the taste left behind. So and that make our party more memorable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the
I
best.
just
The noodle.
I can really hear my stepmother saying like "Hey, don't have the soup at the end of the hot pot." It's like,
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
toxic.
Is it
Don't
because
be
it's like
drinking that.
toxic?
Like the hot air, you know, it's
Oh,
like bad
yeah,
for the
Yeah.
chi. It throws
Oh,
off
yeah.
your
Yeah.
chi.
The chi,
And too much
Yeah.
heat. Too much
it's
heat.
too much heat. It's too much heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Chiyi, I don't finish the soup. I just finish the
The
udon.
udon, okay.
Which
Yeah.
soaks up the soup, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Uh,
interesting. Mine is still well. So my favorite hot pot ingredient. It used to be enoki. It's also changed now to the like tofu skin, the deep fried
Yeah.
tofu skin that
Mhm.
David probably will say this exact same answer.
That's the same.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also I recently discovered it too, and it's so good. Like
it's
it's
delicious.
the texture and everything. Oh, my mouth is actually watering
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Isn't it so incredible that you can be alive for decades and still be
Oh, I know.
discovering new hot pot
New.
ingredients?
I know.
Every time you
Yeah.
go to hot pot, you gotta like there's just one
I
new thing and
know.
you're like, I'm sorry. And you gotta go with a new friend and you're like,
Yeah.
you've been doing this for years?
Yeah.
You've never heard of this? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Every time.
every time I go to a dim sum or sorry, a hot pot restaurant, I'm always like looking at what the other tables are ordering because it's like, oh wow, everyone's ordering that. You know? Like there's this gluten ball. Sorry, now I'm going on a tangent on hot pot.
Mhm.
But I think they're like big gluten balls that every table at Haidilao was having. And I was like, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that
Anyway.
is either.
Well,
Anyway,
I
I'll
didn't
find
know
out.
until Haidilao it became so trendy. Like I just didn't know you could put youtiao into hot pot. Again, the
Right.
innovations of what you could use to be a sponge.
Yeah.
Oh, those Chinese, the youtiao's the Chinese donuts for people
Yeah.
who don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like the
Uh,
Cantonese, we always put youtiao
yeah, in the
in
breakfast.
our congee.
In the
Congee.
congee, yeah, Taiwan
In the
tea.
Exactly.
congee,
Taiwan tea.
yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
Southern bias. I didn't know. I grew
Ah.
up with Hong Kong hot pot. I didn't know that you could do
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rick and Chi. It was so nice to chat with you both.
So much fun. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you. Have
you.
a good night,
And
everybody.
Chiyi, we need to together.
Yeah, let's
You
get
Yeah.
too need to.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a Toronto hang.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.
Bye.